Hello everyone, my name is David Davis of Porous Palms, and I am wearing a hat today because I didn't feel like doing anything with my hair. It's also September, we're getting into fall season, so I guess wanted to get into the mood because I love cooler weather because I get to wear my beanies and all my sweaters, but I don't have on a sweater today. But welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my second video. For those who are not familiar with me, either from YouTube or anywhere else on social media, I am an artist, a writer, a mystic, a tarot card reader. More on that towards the end of the video, but also throughout the video because that's what this video is about. So I guess we can just get right into it. So today's video is about a deck, a tarot deck I literally just bought yesterday. As of recording this video, it is 11:11 a.m. So that's fine, I guess. It is the Thoth or Thoth deck. Throughout this video, I'm going to say Thoth deck. Just it's easier to roll off the tongue for me. But yeah, so as of, like I said, recording this video, I have not even had this deck for a full 24 hours. So this is like first impressions. I have done a flip through of the deck, like, flipping through the deck. I've done an interview reading with the deck to sort of gauge its energy, and I'm going to get into that later in this video as well because it was a very interesting reading overall. Just like I said about the energy of the deck, I normally don't share interview readings I do like publicly because I do those often for the decks I have, not super frequently, but every once in a while as I let the deck recharge, I'll do another interview reading because maybe the energy has shifted a bit. But completely different video on animism and how that informs my spiritual practice. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the Thoth deck because like a lot of people, I feel I had seen this deck for years, just everywhere, in bookstores primarily. It was like one of the only sort of tarot or oracle decks in stores. I'm talking about Barnes and Noble primarily, at least in my experience, that wasn't Rider-Waite-Smith or like fairies and angels. And then there were like a few indie decks sprinkled in there, but it was the only other deck I saw. I never got it because I was just so not into the artwork from what I could see of it. It just did not resonate with me, even when I was studying Kabbalah and Thelema. It still just did not resonate with me. I just could not wrap my mind around, or bring myself rather, to get this deck and to start using it. But I finally broke down and got it yesterday. It was totally by chance. I went into a store here in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and I was looking for something completely different. They didn't have it, so I'm like, let me go over to their tarot section because why not? And I saw it and I'm like, let me just get it and bring it home. And I've had some really interesting moments with it in the past, since last night. I bought it was around like 5:30 p.m. yesterday, so like I said, not even a full 24 hours yet. By the time this video gets uploaded, it'll probably be 24 hours because you know how YouTube is, but as of now, not even a full 24 hours. So I do have some notes. The first part primarily just giving a brief background of what the Thoth deck is and its origins, just to contextualize the rest of the conversation a little bit. And like I said, I do have notes, so that's what I'm going to be primarily reading from. So first and foremost, the Thoth tarot deck was conceptualized by the infamous, is it infamous? It is, yeah, the infamous occultist and magician and philosopher and writer and artist Aleister Crowley. Everyone, I feel like, has heard that name at some point, whether you're a student of the occult or not, but it's just one of those names. He has, love him or hate him, he has heavily influenced Western occultism in ways that very few people have. So you kind of just credit where credit is due. But like I said, it was conceptualized by Aleister Crowley, and painted, the artwork painted by Lady Frida Harris. In conjunction with this deck, Crowley also wrote a book titled The Book of Thoth. Um, I have not read this book, however, I have read some of Crowley's other work. From what I've heard of the Book of Thoth, or heard about the Book of Thoth, and from what I know from reading some of his other work, Crowley's writing style is very dense, very Baroque, if you will, very, he is very passionate, or he was very passionate about what he studied and what he, practiced. And, I guess he just wanted the world to know it. So I am looking forward to reading the book, because the book was written to be used with this deck. So I do need to get my hands on it. The deck was published posthumously by the O.T.O, the Ordo Templi Orientis. I believe I pronounced that correctly. It's a magical order with deep connections to Thelema, which is the magical and religious system developed by Aleister Crowley. So this video is not going to be a deep dive or an exploration of really any of the things I just said. This is just here to give some introduction to it. This video will also contain some comparisons between the Thoth deck and the Rider-Waite-Smith system, the Thoth system and the Rider-Waite-Smith system. And I'm going to make some statements that may come off or may sound like I'm belittling one system over the other, or I'm sort of trivializing one system over another. That is not my intention whatsoever. It's just they're very different in a lot of ways, and I feel like they have two very different uses as far as I'm concerned. So they really, it's really like comparing apples and oranges. That's all I really have to say about it. I mean, it's really apples and oranges in from a lot of ways, and this is just from one evening with the Thoth deck. I've spent quite a bit more time with the Rider-Waite-Smith system studying it, and a little bit of time actually using it, but Thoth, like I said, brand new. So the first thing, just to get right into the video, because I don't want it to be too long, so YouTube can go on about their business. Also, I don't want to do all of that editing. So the first point, I have 4 points, is something that was actually beautifully verbalized by another channel here on YouTube. I don't know where I'm pointing to. Another channel here on YouTube called, Joe Monteleone, or Tarot with Joe. I'll put a link to the video I watched somewhere. But he was talking about, the video was about like 6 things you should know before, working with the Thoth deck. It's a really good video. Like I said, I'll link it somewhere if I figure out how to do that. But one of the first things I noticed about the deck, that I really couldn't put into words, and like I said, he did a very good job of putting it into words, was the Thoth deck is the essence of the concept present, within the tarot universe or cosmology, while the Rider-Waite-Smith image is a depiction or an example of that concept, usually a slightly more mundane. And again, this is not me trying to trivialize or belittle one system, but it's usually a slightly more mundane example of that concept. There are abstract elements and surreal elements in the Rider-Waite-Smith images, of course, but for the most part, it's like you're looking at people, and people living symbolically, but living nonetheless the different parts of the human experience. So the example I chose to use, he used a different example, but this one I feel is equally good, I guess, is the Fool cards. So this is the Golden Art Nouveau Tarot, a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. Sorry, I was looking at my nails to see if they were clean. A Rider-Waite-Smith clone. It's the Rider-Waite-Smith image, just updated with a new art style, new sense of perspective. Line work is different regardless, but it's the essence of the original image is there. This is a person we're looking at. A person having it's a spiritual experience, but it's a very human, a very physical, a very tangible experience at that. It's far more relatable because, again, we're looking at a person interacting with the world that we're familiar with. Like we've all felt the sunlight on our skin. We've all sort of stood somewhere and looked in front of us. Like there's this very human thing that's happening. Spiritual undertones, and stuff, but still a very human experience. The Fool in the Thoth deck is like the spirit of the Fool. So while like this is the Fool, this is the spirit of the Fool. This is the essence, the force, the presence, the archetype. That is pushing the Fool to do this thing, to embark on this journey. So this is it's far more abstract, the Thoth version, for lack of a better term, I guess, far more abstract than the Rider-Waite-Smith image, far less human, and it's humanoid, definitely, but this is not a person per se. It looks like, and as I study this deck more, I'm obviously going to become more familiar with a lot of the symbolism, but this looks at this being, they look a little animalistic. They have like horns, it looks like. They're yellow, very radiant. They're interacting with more things. There's more of this sort of cosmic, I wonder if you can hear that. I have my window open, and it's a Saturday morning, so people are just walking around outside. I'm on the 6th floor, so I doubt it's super loud. But I hope that makes sense. See if I could try to find like another example, maybe. The Hierophant, whatever. Let me try to find it in the Golden Art Nouveau deck so I can compare them. But I feel like it's a very similar concept. And again, that's not to say that there are no, super abstract cards in the Rider-Waite-Smith system. That's not to say that, there are all these super mundane depictions. I mean, just look at the Wheel of Fortune, just look at the High Priestess. There are definitely some there's a lot of esotericism in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Like, again, not me trying to trivialize or trying to sort of strip the magic out of it, but it's just something I noticed, and something that was, like I said, verbalized very well and put into words very well by the other YouTuber I referred to. But you have the Hierophant, I don't know how to pronounce that. Pope, you know what I mean? Like it's a Pope figure, religious leader, something we're familiar with. Even if you're not Catholic, like, you know who the Pope is, what the Pope is, what the Pope represents, what they look like, the headdress, the robe, the scepter, all these things, the hand, like this is again a very human experience, while this Hierophant is again very much the spirit behind the Pope, the spirit behind that religious leader, the spirit of tradition, of structure, of rules and regulations and dogma. Like, this is it's same card, two very different figures. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm referring to when I'm saying, when I'm making that point. So the second thing is, and this is also something that was mentioned in the other video, but also something I noticed. So the point is, this deck has an agenda. It definitely knows how it wants you to walk away from a reading with these cards. So it's the way Tarot with Joe Monteleone explained it. He used the example of just he explained it referring to the fact that Crowley made this deck within a thelemic framework. Like, if that makes any sense, if I phrase that correctly, like he had an agenda. he had a very specific worldview that he wanted to get across on a spiritual and a metaphysical level. He had his own, philosophies, his own ideas about science and magic and history, and he wanted to get that across, and he infused that into his deck, which is what all deck creators do. Tarot deck, oracle deck creators do. They infuse their spiritual sensibilities, their sort of metaphysical sensibilities into their work. That's not new. But for me, what sets this deck, I don't want to say what sets it apart, but it's because this isn't the only deck that does this. It's definitely not the only deck that does this. But one thing I noticed, mainly because I tend to avoid decks that do this, decks that have keywords on them, because I feel like it could potentially skew the reading. Because as the reader, whether you're reading for yourself or for someone else, you pull the five of discs, five of pentacles in a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Yes, those cards have names that were sort of given to them, I believe, by the sort of within a Golden Dawn framework, but those names aren't printed on the card. You know what I mean? What is the name of that card? Five of Pentacles, like something about like material ruin or something like that. And it's like the people, they're like in the cold and they're physically, battered, and they're outside of the church, and it's like, there's the warm glow coming from within the church, but they're outside, and like I said, they're cold and they're battered, and I think it's like something about material ruin. But that's not printed on the card. So if you don't know the names of those cards, you can read the Five of Pentacles in a variety of different ways without having that sort of ingrained in you. But the Five of Discs, it just says worry. Like, it's very hard unless you get a version of this deck that does not have that on there, or if you just trim this, which I have no intention of doing, it's hard to ignore that. So like if that comes up in a reading, it's hard to ignore the fact that this card literally says worry, or the fact that the Ten of Swords literally says ruin. It knows how it wants you to read these cards. This is not a sort of, which it kind of segues into the next point, but this is not a deck where the creator was like, just use your intuition, which leads me into my next point. So it's very clear, just in my, like I said, reading Crowley's other works, having like briefly studying Kabbalah in the past, studying Thelema in the past, it's clear that the use of this deck is enhanced by your knowledge of these things, your knowledge of astrology, your knowledge of Thelema, your knowledge of Kabbalah. But I'm curious, again, less than 24 hours, I'm curious how this deck works intuitively, like if it can be worked with intuitively, even though the interpretations are literally printed on the card, so it's hard to ignore that. And I don't think you should ignore it. In my previous video, I briefly brought up how my spiritual practice is deeply rooted in the idea of animism, this idea that everything is alive, everything has a spirit, everything has an energy. So if this deck wants its Ten of Swords to be read as ruin, then I'm going to read it as ruin. The time was taken to put it on the card. I'm kind of going to try my best, my absolute best, to make that work for the reading, if that makes any sense. But that's just something I'm curious about. It's not really a point. It's just something I'm going to be working with for however long I have this deck. And finally, and again, this really isn't as much of a point as it is for, let me rewind a bit. Going back to this deck having an agenda and knowing how it wants you to feel. I did an interview reading with this deck last night, and I'm going to briefly go into the cards I received in that reading. And I'm not going to go into the whole reading, but I'm going to go into three specific cards in the reading, and I'm going to tell you what they represented within the context of that interview. So the third card was, what are your limits? So I'm asking the deck, what are your limits as a deck? The fourth card was, what do you have to teach me? And the fifth card was, how do I best learn and collaborate with you? If I remember correctly. So the limit of the deck, I got the Empress card. What do you have to teach me? I got worry. This is why I have these cards out already. I had worry, or I got worry. And then how do I best learn with you and collaborate with you? I got ruin. That allows me to skip to my fourth point about why I probably won't be using this deck for other people, and I'll probably be using it for my own sort of shadow work. I feel like this deck it's very much like my Hoodoo Tarot is very harsh. Not harsh. It's very blunt, which is what I love about it. Like, it will tell you you're a fuck up right now. This is not who you are, but like as of now, based on the decisions you have made, leading up to this reading, you fucked up. But I'm telling you this because I love you. It has a familial energy, and that has, for me personally, that has a lot to do with my spiritual practice, me being a hoodoo practitioner, a root worker, someone who works with my ancestors who are typically family members. It has that energy of like, I'm going to tell you like it is. I'm going to tell you you're wrong because I love you, because I want to see you get better. It's a safe space. You know what I mean? It's a safe space. If your parents or your sibling or your aunt or uncle or your grandparents are sort of really digging into you, they're not doing it to hurt you, typically, if, assuming the relationship is healthy. But if assuming that is the case, they're not doing that to hurt you. They're doing it to make you a better person. They want to see you do better. They don't want to see you hurt yourself. They don't want to see you hurt, anyone else. This deck, I'm not going to say it doesn't care about me. However, I am going to say it's going to it tells it like it is, but it does not really care about my feelings. There won't be that this hurts me more than it hurts you conversation at the end of it. If that makes any sense. Like, it's just going to, here's what I have to say. You're fucking up. Everything may fall apart because of that, and it's just going to drop the mic and walk out. And I feel like ultimately that will make me a better person. It will ultimately have the same effect that, the Hoodoo Tarot has on the overall situation. It's just, you're going to be taking two different roads to get there. Or at least, I'm saying I'm going to be taking two very different roads to get there. So I think this is going to be an interesting journey. To see like when I feel drawn to this deck, like under what circumstances will I, instinctively reach for this deck to receive some kind of guidance or clarity. I'm also just, I'm just interested overall in like how I'm going to be using this deck, specifically within the context of self-development and shadow work. And I feel like it's a far more shadow-oriented version, for lack of a much better term, because the decks aren't related in any way. But within my sort of arsenal of decks, I was using my Dust to Onyx Tarot as sort of my go-to abstract deck, my go-to deck where I'm like, there's a larger concept I want to tap into, and then I'm asking the deck to guide me, through that, to help me navigate that. And while I've definitely gotten some very blunt, harsh answers from this deck, I feel like this one, like both of these are like equally, cosmic, equally universal in reference to the universe, not universal in reference to like it's for everyone. but both decks are equally cosmic, equally sort of archetypal, equally abstract in their own way. But I feel like the Thoth Tarot is a bit more shadow oriented, which I'm curious. I'm excited to see that. I'm really excited. So that's all I have to say about the deck so far. As I use it more and I work with it more, I will document that either here or on, drumroll, anywhere else on my social media. So I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon, all at Porous Palms. Obviously here on YouTube as well at Porous Palms. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I am a tarot card reader, so if you want to book a reading with me, more information on that will be in the description box. I realized in the last video I called it the bio. It's not the bio, it's the description box. Also, when you follow me on social media, it will be plastered everywhere. So yeah, I look forward to potentially working with you whenever you're watching this video. And thank you for watching the video. So have a great day. I'm going to edit this, very minimal editing I imagine, and upload it, and hopefully it is up by end of day today. So you can watch it and share it and like and comment and subscribe and make it go viral and make it go #1 on trending, guys. A tarot deck review, I guess, for lack of a better term, #1 on the trending page. Let's make that happen. Let's be the first. All right. See y'all next week. Bye.